What if I told you that everything you've been doing to manifest money could be replaced by just one sentence? Not 10 affirmations, not a complicated routine, not hours of visualization, just one phrase, repeated the right way. Because here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear. It's not that manifestation doesn't work. It's that most people are speaking the wrong language. They're asking, hoping, waiting, and calling that the law of attraction. But the universe doesn't respond to desperation. It doesn't respond to "I hope this works." It responds to certainty, to authority, to identity. And maybe you've felt this before. That frustration of doing everything right and still seeing nothing change. You repeat affirmations, you try to stay positive, you visualize the money, the freedom, the abundance. And then you open your bank account, and reality hits. That gap between what you want and what you have starts to feel bigger, heavier, more real. So you try harder. You look for another technique, another video, another secret. But what if the problem isn't that you haven't found the right method? What if the problem is that you've been overcomplicating something that was never meant to be complicated? Because the truth is, manifestation was never about doing more. It was about shifting how you show up, the words you use, the energy behind them, the way you position yourself in relation to money. Most people speak like they're chasing it, like they're waiting for permission, like they're hoping the universe finally decides to respond. But what if you could flip that completely? What if, instead of chasing money, money started responding to you? What if, instead of asking, you started declaring? What if the only thing standing between you and a completely different financial reality was one simple phrase that shifts your frequency instantly? Not a magic trick, not something you say once and forget, but something that changes the way you think, the way you speak, and the way the universe responds to you. And here's the part most people miss. It's not just about the words themselves. It's about what those words represent, the identity behind them, the certainty they carry. Because the same sentence, spoken from doubt, does nothing, but spoken from authority, it changes everything. So before I show you what that phrase is, you need to understand why everything you've tried up until now hasn't worked the way you expected. Because once you see this clearly, the shift becomes inevitable. And that's exactly where we're going next. And if what I just said hit you in any way, if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but still not seeing the money, the abundance, the results you expected, then pause for a second and really acknowledge that feeling, because you're not alone in this. There are thousands of people right now going through the exact same cycle, repeating affirmations, trying to stay positive, holding on to hope, while deep down, there's this quiet question: why isn't it working for me? So before we go deeper, I want you to do something simple but meaningful. If this resonates with you, leave a like on this video, not just for the algorithm, but as a small signal to yourself that you're ready to shift something. And I want to hear from you. In the comments, tell me honestly, have you ever felt like you were doing everything to manifest wealth, but nothing was really changing? Just type something like, "I've felt this," or "This is me." That moment of honesty matters more than you think, because awareness is where everything begins to change. And if you're someone who's serious about changing your relationship with money, manifestation, and abundance, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because what we're building here isn't just motivation. It's a different way of thinking, speaking, and creating results. Now, with that in mind, there's something you need to understand before I reveal the phrase itself, because without this, even the most powerful words won't work the way they're supposed to. So let's get real for a moment, because this is where most people get stuck without even realizing it. You think you've been trying to manifest money, but what if, without noticing, you've actually been reinforcing the exact opposite? Think about the last time you said something like, "I want money," or "I need this to work," or even "I hope things change soon." On the surface, it sounds positive. It sounds like you're focused on abundance, on manifestation, on creating a better financial reality. But underneath those words, there's something else happening. There's a hidden message. When you say "I want money," what you're really broadcasting is that you don't have it. When you say "I need," you're amplifying lack. When you say "I hope," you're placing yourself in a position of waiting, of uncertainty, of not being in control. And the law of attraction doesn't respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you are consistently expressing. This is where everything starts to shift, because the universe doesn't interpret your words the way you think it does. It doesn't focus on the surface meaning. It picks up on the frequency behind them, the emotional charge, the identity you're operating from. And if that identity is someone who is chasing money, needing money, hoping for money, then that's exactly the loop that keeps repeating. More wanting, more waiting, more not having. And this is why so many people feel frustrated with manifestation. They say, I've tried everything. Affirmations, visualization, positive thinking, but nothing changes. And it's not because manifestation doesn't work. It's because the language they're using is misaligned with what they actually want. It's like trying to tune into a radio station, but you're slightly off frequency. The music is there, the signal exists, but you can't hear it clearly because you're not aligned with it. And instead of adjusting the frequency, most people just turn up the volume. They repeat affirmations louder. They try harder. They push more. But the signal doesn't change because effort doesn't fix misalignment. Awareness does. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Because this isn't just about the words you say out loud. It's about the silent conversations happening in your mind all day. The quick thoughts when you check your bank account. The feeling in your chest when you think about money. The subtle doubt that creeps in when nothing happens right away. That internal dialogue is part of your manifestation language. You might say, money flows to me easily in the morning. But if 5 minutes later you're thinking, why is my account still the same? Which one do you think carries more weight? The spoken affirmation, or the emotional reaction that follows it? That's the gap. That's the disconnect. And that's exactly where most people lose their power without even noticing. Because manifestation isn't just about what you say. It's about what you believe while you're saying it. It's about the identity you're reinforcing every single time you speak, think, or react. And if those don't match, the results won't either. So when you feel like the universe isn't responding, it's not ignoring you. It's responding perfectly, just not to the version of the message you think you're sending. And once you really see this, once you become aware of how your current language is shaping your reality, you can't unsee it. You start catching yourself. You start noticing the patterns, the subtle ways you've been speaking from lack, from doubt, from waiting, even when you thought you were doing everything right. And that awareness, that moment where you realize this might be the real reason nothing has changed yet. That's where everything begins to open up. Because now you're no longer blindly repeating words. You're starting to question the entire foundation of how you communicate with the universe. And that's important, because before you can use the right phrase, you need to understand the language it needs to be spoken in. And if what you just realized hit you on a deeper level, I want you to anchor it with something simple. Go to the comments and type, I see the pattern, not just as words, but as a moment of awareness, a shift from unconscious repetition to conscious creation. Now that you've started to see the pattern, something deeper begins to unfold, because awareness alone doesn't change your reality. It just shows you where the misalignment is. And this is exactly where most people stop. They realize they've been speaking from lack, from doubt, from waiting, but they don't know what to replace it with. So they try to fix it the same way they've always tried everything else, by adding more words, more affirmations, more techniques, more effort. But the truth is, manifestation was never about saying more. It was about saying it differently. And this is where the real shift begins, because the universe doesn't respond to how many times you repeat something. It responds to the frequency behind what you're saying. And frequency isn't built through repetition alone. It's built through authority. Let that sink in for a second. There's a huge difference between saying something and declaring it, between hoping something is true and speaking as if it already is, between asking for permission and deciding that something is already done. Most people live in the first category without even realizing it. They say things like, I'm trying to manifest money. I hope abundance comes. I believe things will get better. And again, on the surface, it sounds positive. It sounds aligned. But underneath, there's hesitation. There's uncertainty. There's a subtle energy of this isn't here yet. And the universe picks up on that instantly, because manifestation isn't about convincing the universe. It's about reflecting who you are being. And if who you are being is someone who is still waiting, still hoping, still unsure, then that's exactly the reality that keeps showing up. But when you shift into authority, everything changes. Authority is quiet, but it's absolute. It's not loud, it's not desperate, it doesn't need to prove anything. It simply states, and knows. Think about it like this. When someone with real authority speaks, they don't repeat themselves 10 times. They don't beg to be heard. They say it once, and it carries weight. That's the frequency the universe responds to, not volume, not repetition, not emotion alone, but certainty. And here's where it gets even more powerful. Because this isn't something you need to force. It's something you step into. It's a shift in identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone trying to manifest money, you begin to see yourself as someone whose words shape reality. That's a completely different position. One chases, the other attracts, one asks, the other commands, one waits, the other decides. And the moment you start operating from that second identity, even slightly, you'll notice something subtle begin to change. The way you think about money shifts. The way you speak about your life shifts. Even your reactions start to change. Situations that would normally trigger doubt start to feel neutral, controlled, almost irrelevant, because you're no longer reacting from lack. You're responding from certainty. Now, this doesn't mean everything instantly changes overnight, but it does mean the direction changes. And in manifestation, direction is everything. Because once you're aligned with the right frequency, things don't have to be forced anymore. They begin to move, and this is the part most people never fully understand. You don't create results by chasing them. You create results by becoming the version of yourself that naturally experiences them. That's why two people can say the exact same affirmation and get completely different outcomes. One is saying it from hope, the other from identity. One is trying to make it real. The other already feels like it is. Same words, different frequency, completely different reality. So before I give you the phrase, you need to feel this difference inside you. Not just understand it logically, but recognize it in your own patterns. The moments you've been speaking from doubt, the times you've been asking instead of deciding, the subtle ways you've been placing yourself below what you're trying to attract, because the phrase itself isn't powerful on its own. What makes it powerful is the state you bring into it, the authority behind it, the identity you step into when you say it. And once that clicks, once you feel what it means to speak from certainty instead of lack, you're no longer just repeating words. You're starting to access something much deeper, something that most people overlook completely. And if you can feel that shift starting to happen, even just a little, anchor it. Go to the comments and type, "I speak with authority," not as motivation, but as a decision, as a signal that you're no longer speaking from the same place as before. There's a moment, and I want you to really pay attention to this. There's a moment where everything starts to shift, but almost nobody notices it. It's not when the money arrives. It's not when your bank account changes. It's not when the opportunity shows up. It happens before all of that. It happens the moment you stop checking and start knowing. Because if you're honest with yourself, most of the time when you say you're manifesting wealth, you're actually doing something else. You're watching, you're waiting, you're testing reality to see if it's finally going to give you what you asked for. You say the words, but then you look at your phone, you repeat the phrase, but then you check your bank account, you try to believe, but deep down, you're still asking, is it working? And that question alone, that silent doubt, that need for confirmation, breaks the entire frequency, because manifestation isn't built on repetition alone. It's built on identity. This is where most people get stuck. They think the power is in the phrase. They think the power is in the technique. They think if they just find the right words, everything will change. But the truth is, the words only work when they match who you believe you are. Let me explain this in a way you'll never forget. Imagine someone who is absolutely certain about something simple, like their own name. They don't repeat it all day, trying to convince themselves. They don't question it. They don't look for signs to confirm it. They just know. That's the level of certainty manifestation requires. And this is the shift that changes everything. When you move from "I'm trying to manifest money" to "of course money responds to me," you stop performing and you start embodying. You stop chasing and you start attracting. You stop hoping and you start expecting. And expectation, calm, grounded, unquestioned expectation, is one of the most powerful frequencies you can operate in, because expectation doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It doesn't beg. It simply assumes it's already done. Think about that for a second. What would change in your behavior, in your energy, in the way you move through your day. If you truly believed that the money you want is already on its way to you, not maybe, not hopefully, but already decided, you wouldn't check every 5 minutes. You wouldn't feel that tightness in your chest. You wouldn't spiral when nothing happens. Immediately, you would move differently. You would speak differently. You would make decisions differently. You would carry yourself with a quiet certainty that most people don't understand, and that version of you is the version that manifestation responds to, because the universe doesn't just respond to your words, it mirrors your state. If your state is doubt, you get delay. If your state is lack, you get more lack. But if your state is certainty, grounded, calm, unwavering certainty, things begin to reorganize in ways you can't always predict. Opportunities start appearing in unexpected places. People start reaching out without you chasing them. Solutions show up in moments that feel almost too perfectly timed, and it's not because something magical suddenly started happening. It's because you finally stopped interrupting the process with doubt. This is where most people fail. Right here. They start strong. They feel motivated. They repeat the phrase. They feel the shift. And then, nothing happens immediately. And in that silence, their old identity comes back. See, it's not working. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe this isn't for me. And just like that, they go back to the frequency they've always lived in. But what if that silence isn't failure? What if that silence is just a moment of realignment? What if everything is already moving, but it hasn't reached you yet? This is the part where you decide who you really are. Are you the version of yourself that needs constant proof? Or are you the version that decides and stands by it? Because the people who actually manifest results, they don't stop when it gets quiet. They don't panic when nothing shows up on day 1, or day 2, or even day 3. They stay in the state. They stay in the certainty. They stay aligned with the version of themselves who already has it. And that consistency, that refusal to drop back into doubt, is what separates those who try to manifest from those who actually do. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really feel this question. When nothing seems to be happening, who do you become? Do you go back to fear, or do you stay in power? Because your answer to that question is exactly what determines what happens next. And in a moment, I'm going to show you something even deeper, something most people never realize about this process, something that explains why some manifestations happen almost instantly, while others seem to take longer. And when you see this, everything is going to click in a completely different way. But before we go there, if this part made something inside you shift, even slightly, go down to the comments and type, "I choose certainty, not for me, for you." Because the moment you declare it, you stop being the person who doubts, and you start becoming the person who decides. And this is where everything either locks into place or slips away again without you even realizing it, because now you understand something most people never do. You understand that manifestation isn't about chasing results, it's about sustaining a state. But here's the part almost nobody talks about: maintaining that state in the middle of real life. Not when you're watching a video. Not when you feel motivated, but when things look exactly the same, because that's the real test of your frequency. It's easy to feel powerful for a moment. It's easy to say the words when you're inspired, but can you hold that same certainty when your external reality hasn't caught up yet? This is where your entire financial reality is decided, because your subconscious mind, the part of you that actually drives your manifestation, doesn't respond to what you say once. It responds to what you consistently return to. So if you say the phrase, "feel powerful," and then spend the rest of your day in doubt, checking, overthinking, your dominant frequency is still lack. But if you begin to return again and again to that state of certainty, something starts to stabilize inside you. And once it stabilizes, it becomes natural. Let me explain this in a way you can actually feel. Think about how habits are formed. At first, they feel forced. You have to remember. You have to make an effort. It feels unnatural, but over time, repetition turns into identity. And identity is what manifestation responds to instantly. So when you take these words, this phrase, and instead of using it as a technique, you begin to live with it, carry it, return to it throughout your day, it stops being something you do and becomes something you are. And when that happens, everything changes, because now you're not trying to manifest wealth, you're not trying to attract money, you're not trying to shift your reality. You're operating from a version of yourself where wealth, money, and abundance are already part of your baseline, and that version of you doesn't react the same way anymore. You don't get triggered as easily, you don't spiral when things are slow, you don't feel desperate when nothing shows up immediately. Instead, there's a quiet control, a calm confidence that doesn't need to prove anything. And this is where manifestation becomes fast, not because you're forcing anything, but because there's no internal resistance left to slow it down. Because resistance is subtle. It's not always fear. Sometimes it's impatience. Sometimes it's overthinking. Sometimes it's constantly trying to figure out how it's going to happen. But the moment you keep returning to certainty over and over again, you stop feeding those patterns. And when you stop feeding them, they lose their power. Now something deeper starts to happen. Your decisions begin to align. You start saying yes to things that move you forward. Without overanalyzing, you stop saying yes to things that come from fear or scarcity. You begin to notice opportunities that you would have ignored before. And this is where manifestation and action merge, because a lot of people think it's one or the other. They think it's either just believe or just work harder. But real manifestation happens when your internal state and your external actions start matching each other. When you feel like the version of you who already has it, and you move like that version at the same time, reality has no choice but to adjust. And this is why some people seem to manifest out of nowhere. It's not random. It's alignment. It's the moment where their identity, their energy, and their actions all point in the same direction. And when that happens, things don't feel forced anymore. They feel natural, effortless in a different way. Not effortless because you're doing nothing, but effortless because you're no longer fighting yourself internally. And that's the real shift. You stop being your own resistance. You stop interrupting your own manifestation. You stop going back and forth between belief and doubt. And instead, you hold. You stay. You remain in that state long enough for reality to catch up. Because it always does, but only for those who don't leave the state too early. And this is the part where you need to be honest with yourself again. How often do you drop the state? How often do you start strong and then slowly go back to old patterns without noticing? Because awareness of that is what gives you control, and once you see it, you can change it. You can catch yourself in the moment. You can return to the phrase, return to the certainty. Return to the identity you're choosing to embody. And every time you do that, you reinforce it. You make it stronger. More stable. More natural. Until one day, you don't even have to think about it anymore. You just are that person. And that's when manifestation stops feeling like something mysterious and starts feeling like something inevitable. And if you really felt this shift, not just understood it, but actually felt it, then take a second and anchor it right now. Go to the comments and type, "I hold the state," not as a reminder, but as a decision, because from this point forward, it's not about trying anymore. It's about staying. And what happens when you truly stay in that frequency, when you don't break it, when you don't fall back, is something most people never experience. But you're about to understand exactly how that unfolds in the next part. If you felt something shift inside you while watching this, even if it was subtle, even if you can't fully explain it yet, that's not random. That's alignment. And if you made it all the way here, that already separates you from most people. Most people don't stay long enough to understand. Most people don't go deep enough to actually change. But you did. So now I want you to lock this moment in. Go down to the comments and type, "I hold the state," not as a phrase, but as a decision that from this point forward, you're no longer going back to doubt, to waiting, to chasing. You're staying in the version of you who already has it. And if this message spoke to you in any way, take 1 second to hit the like button. That simple action helps this reach more people who are still stuck in the old patterns, still waiting for something to change. And if you're serious about mastering manifestation, about understanding how to actually shift your reality and not just talk about it, then subscribe to the channel right now, because what you've seen here is just one piece of a much bigger system. There's a next video already on your screen, and that video is going to show you exactly what to do when doubt comes back, when your old identity tries to pull you out of the state, and how to stay aligned no matter what's happening around you. Don't break the flow now. Click the next video on your screen, and I'll see you there.